The immigration ladder, class capability, and the migration marketplace. Introduction. In the modern era, immigration is no longer just a humanitarian gesture or a relic of colonial expansion. It is a highly strategic exercise in economic self-interest. Around the world, nation-states act less like open gates and more like discerning merchants, selectively importing human capital based on perceived value. In this context, immigration is best understood not as a matter of generosity, but as an evolving marketplace where people are sorted, evaluated, and filtered according to the demands of national economies. This exposition introduces the immigration ladder framework, a structured way of understanding how countries rank and prioritize migrants according to their perceived economic value. Rather than framing entrants through the emotionally charged labels of good or bad, we instead divide them into three neutral, objective categories. High-value migrants, those who immediately enhance a nation's economic dynamism. Mid-value migrants, those who have the potential to contribute significantly over time. Low-value migrants, those who, whether through lack of skills, education, or resources, are seen as net burdens on public systems. By observing how different nations design their immigration policies to attract, nurture, or deter these categories, we can decode not only their economic strategies, but also predict future patterns of global mobility. In the pages that follow, we will explore each rung of the immigration ladder, examine how demographic trends are reshaping the migration marketplace, and consider what lies ahead as the competition for valuable human capital intensifies. 2. The value framework, categorizing migrants. At the core of every immigration policy lies an implicit question: what will this person cost or contribute to our economy? The answer determines whether a migrant is welcomed, tolerated, or rejected. To clarify this calculus, we introduce a tiered model that divides migrants into high-value, mid-value, and low-value categories. These are not moral judgments. They are reflections of how a nation-state views a person's net present and future utility to its economy. High-value migrants, defining characteristics, high levels of capital, both financial and intellectual, specialized skills or credentials in STEM, finance, medicine, or entrepreneurship, global mobility and multilingual adaptability, capacity to generate employment or invest in the local economy. Policy treatment, nations compete for these individuals. Countries like Canada, Singapore, the UAE, and the United States offer fast-tracked visas and citizenship pathways, investor or entrepreneur programs, tax incentives, or residency by investment schemes, simplified bureaucratic processes. High-value migrants are seen as instant economic accelerators, a direct upgrade to the national balance sheet. 2. Mid-value migrants, defining characteristics, moderate education and skill levels, potential for upward mobility and integration into the workforce, often younger with a long runway of economic productivity, may require state support for language, retraining, or cultural integration. Policy treatment. Mid-value migrants are courted selectively through points-based immigration systems, e.g. Australia, New Zealand, skilled worker visas tied to labor shortages, temporary worker programs that offer transition to permanent residency. They are seen as long-term bets, migrants who may not offer instant economic returns, but who, over time, integrate, work, and contribute to tax bases and demographic rejuvenation. 3. Low-value migrants, defining characteristics. Low education levels, limited or no technical skills, higher likelihood of dependence on welfare or public services, limited potential for upward mobility due to age, language, or socioeconomic barriers, often fleeing from war, poverty, or unstable regions. Policy treatment. Low-value migrants are typically subject to strict quotas or caps, framed in political discourse as burdens or crises, processed through asylum systems or family reunification channels with long delays, frequently caught in populist debates about integration and public cost. While some states accept them for humanitarian reasons or due to international obligations, the general policy tone is one of containment or deterrence. This value framework is not codified in law, but it governs immigration logic everywhere, from the visa office to the legislature. Understanding this model allows us to see immigration not as a chaotic or emotional issue, but as a cold, calculated form of economic filtering. The strategic calculus of nation-states. Immigration policy is not a moral manifesto. It's an economic algorithm. Countries, particularly in the 21st century, design their immigration systems to maximize returns on human capital, curating entrants the same way a venture capitalist screens investments. At its core, this calculus is shaped by three interlocking variables: demographics, labor market needs, national long-term competitiveness. Let's explore how these drive state-level decisions across the tiers of migrant value. 1. Demographic pressures and the aging dilemma. Many developed countries face an existential threat: shrinking, aging populations. Japan, Italy, Germany, and South Korea are prime examples of societies that simply don't produce enough young workers to support their retirees and welfare states. The solution? Import people, but selectively. High-value migrants are ideal. They can plug productivity gaps without adding welfare burdens. Mid-value migrants are welcomed with caution. They are younger and trainable, but may require short-term investment in education or housing. Low-value migrants, while potentially useful in labor-short sectors like agriculture or elder care, are often rejected or politically scapegoated due to their perceived drain on public services. Immigration becomes a substitute for fertility, but with strings attached. 2. Labor market shortages. Precision-based entry. Nations often tailor immigration policy to patch holes in their domestic workforce. Canada's express entry system filters applicants through a points-based system favoring in-demand skill sets. The UAE aggressively attracts foreign professionals with high wages and zero-tax environments, but imposes strict dependence on employer sponsorship. The UK, post-Brexit, introduced a tiered visa system to prioritize economic contributors while curbing low-wage migration from the EU. Each of these systems is designed to tilt the door open for high and mid-value entrants while closing it to those unlikely to fill high ROI roles. 3. Long-term competitiveness and global branding. Immigration isn't just about filling jobs, it's about positioning a nation on the global economic leaderboard. The U.S. wins global talent wars by importing elite researchers, founders, and PhDs. Estonia attracts digital nomads and e-residents to fuel its innovation ecosystem. Singapore brands itself as a hub of efficiency and safety, luring high-value families and firms alike. This isn't immigration, it's economic curation. Countries are not just opening borders, they're marketing themselves as products to attract the most valuable users. In sum, immigration is no longer reactive. It's predictive, strategic, and ruthlessly filtered. A nation's immigration policy reveals its economic anxieties, growth ambitions, and competitive self-image more clearly than its budget or its slogans. This content is brought to you by Bobby Giggs. Promote your brand here and reach a wide audience across platforms like YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Follow the links in the description to get started. Global gravity, where the value flows. If immigration is a marketplace, then some regions act as magnets for talent, while others become net exporters of labor. What determines this gravitational pull? Two main factors. One, the strength of a region's middle class, i.e., its capacity to consume and support high and mid-value entrants. Two, its geopolitical and economic alliances, which create corridors of opportunity or restriction. Let's break it down. 1. China and India, the rising engines of demand. China's middle class is expected to reach 1.2 billion by 2027. That's a quarter of the global total. Its growth creates a total addressable market so vast that even Western nations now compete to access it, not just through trade, but by embedding talent within it. China may not be known for open immigration, but its domestic market gravity attracts high-value entrants through joint ventures, executive transfers, foreign investment residency schemes. India's future is built on two tracks: a youthful, tech-savvy population, a booming export market for services. From Silicon Valley to Dubai, Indian mid- and high-value migrants are building global reputations in finance, software, and entrepreneurship. As India's GDP per capita rises, it will invert its migration role, from labor exporter to brain magnet. Its rising middle class will anchor the region, turning cities like Bangalore, Hyderabad, and Mumbai into migration destinations, not just departure points. 2. Southeast Asia, Beneficiaries by proximity, countries like Vietnam, Indonesia, and the Philippines sit at the crossroads of India's energy and China's capital. Their growing middle classes, low labor costs, and geographic positioning make them emerging hubs for outsourced tech and manufacturing, regional entrepreneurship, digital nomad migration, especially in Indonesia and Thailand. While they don't yet compete for high-value migrants at scale, their mid-value migration ecosystem is maturing fast. 3. South America and BRICS, realignment in motion. South America, historically viewed as economically volatile, is quietly gaining relevance through BRICS alliances. Brazil, in particular, is strengthening trade ties with China and India, investing in digital infrastructure and financial modernization, opening new lanes for intra-BRICS migration. If India and China represent centers of gravity, then South America could become the swing region, not the source of low-value migration, but a region reshaping its image as a competitive, cooperative player in global labor flows. 4. The West, aging but still aspirational. Despite demographic headwinds, the United States, Canada, Germany, and other European nations remain apex destinations, largely due to high wages, social safety nets, world-class education and health systems, soft power, culture, stability, personal freedom. However, their immigration policies are becoming tighter and more selective, pivoting away from humanitarian entry and toward economic filtering. They remain powerful magnets for high-value migrants, but the terms of entry are shifting rapidly. Global migration now behaves like capital. It flows toward economic opportunity, policy openness, and cultural magnetism, and retreats from instability, stagnation, or isolation. The politics of selectivity. While the underlying economic logic of immigration policy is cold and rational, the public presentation of immigration is often heated, emotional, and contradictory. This is because governments must perform a delicate balancing act, engineering economic outcomes while managing domestic political perception. Here's how that tension plays out. Humanitarian ideals versus economic pragmatism. On paper, many nations, especially in the West, commit to values like refugee protection, family reunification, human rights obligations. But in practice, the economic value framework reigns supreme. Consider, skilled workers are fast-tracked. Investors are celebrated. Refugees and asylum seekers are entangled in bureaucratic purgatories. Family sponsorships are throttled unless the sponsor demonstrates financial self-sufficiency. Official rhetoric emphasizes fairness and inclusivity. Operational reality filters for economic benefit. 2. Political narratives, migration as scapegoat or trophy. Depending on the political climate, migrants can be framed as either contributors, the doctors saving our hospitals, the entrepreneurs boosting our economy. Threats, they're taking our jobs, they're draining our welfare systems. Governments often highlight high-value migrants to justify immigration. We need tech talent, while blaming low-value migration for domestic anxieties, housing shortages, crime, cultural change. This selective storytelling reinforces the immigration ladder subconsciously in the public mind, even if it's rarely explained in those terms. 3. National branding, competing for talent. Beyond mere policy, countries now market themselves internationally to attract high and mid-value migrants. Canada brands itself as inclusive, stable, and opportunity-rich. Singapore markets its safety, prosperity, and efficiency. The UAE promotes luxury, business friendliness, and low taxes. Even the U.S., despite its political divisions, still draws strength from a global brand of innovation, freedom, and opportunity, powerful lures for high-value entrants. Meanwhile, countries that fail to modernize their image risk losing out in the global competition for human capital. In the end, immigration policy is not just about who can come, it's about who is being sold a dream and how that dream aligns with national economic interests. Looking forward, a competitive market for movers. The future of immigration will not be shaped solely by the needs of countries, but also by the choices of individuals. As global mobility increases and remote work untethers labor from location, high and mid-value migrants will become choosier, evaluating countries the way countries once evaluated them. This shift is ushering in a new reality. Nations are no longer gatekeepers. They are brands competing for talent. 1. a world of options for high-value migrants. Thanks to digitalization, high-value individuals, entrepreneurs, engineers, digital nomads, investors are no longer bound to their home countries or even a single destination. They can shop for tax efficiency, Portugal, UAE, Monaco, evaluate lifestyle quality, Japan, Spain, New Zealand, assess citizenship perks and global mobility, Malta, St. Kitts, Ireland. Countries like Estonia, Barbados, and Georgia are already tapping into this trend by offering digital nomad visas, remote residency programs, and e-citizenship platforms. For this emerging class, migration is not just an escape, it's a portfolio decision. Mid-value migrants as global swing workers. Mid-value migrants, those with solid education, training, and growth potential, are quickly becoming the most sought-after demographic. Why? They're young. They're adaptable. They can integrate into both advanced and developing economies. Expect increased competition for this group as aging nations seek workers to balance their dependency ratios. Emerging economies try to retain and upskill them. Private companies sponsor their relocation as part of international talent pipelines. In essence, mid-value migrants are the global middle class of mobility, and they're gaining leverage. 3. Low-value migration in a fragmenting world. Unfortunately, low-value migrants, those fleeing poverty, instability, or low education, will face a shrinking menu of options. As national gatekeeping gets smarter and more automated, AI-powered visa filters, biometric profiling, border enforcement will become more sophisticated. However, this group will still be necessary in certain labor-starved sectors, agriculture, elder care, logistics, still arrive in large numbers due to geopolitical upheaval and climate migration, still fuel political backlash, especially in democracies facing rising populism. The future for low-value migrants is not elimination, but marginalization within a hyper-optimized system. Immigration as geopolitical strategy. Migration will increasingly be used as a lever of soft power and diplomacy. Gulf states will trade visas for investment and influence. BRICS nations may open intra-bloc migration lanes as part of economic integration. China and India will wield their diaspora as economic and political bridges across continents. We will see the emergence of migration corridors, not just between countries, but within political alliances and economic ecosystems. In sum, we are entering an era where migration is no longer just about movement. It's about strategic positioning. For individuals and nations alike, the stakes have never been higher. 7. Conclusion. Immigration has always been a mechanism of survival, ambition, and reinvention, but today it is also a strategic lever of national advantage. Through the lens of the immigration ladder, we can now see the global system for what it truly is, a structured marketplace, where people are evaluated not just on identity, but on economic value. By distinguishing between high-value, mid-value, and low-value migrants, we've clarified the unspoken architecture behind border policies, visa regimes, and public sentiment. It is not morality, nor chaos, nor generosity that governs the gates. It is calculated, layered selectivity. High-value migrants are courted like venture capital. Mid-value migrants are groomed like long-term investments. Low-value migrants are managed, deflected, or politicized. This framework does not deny the humanity of migrants, but it insists on seeing the economic logic that shapes their fate. The countries of the future will not merely inherit their populations. They will design them, attracting the individuals who align with their desired trajectory. Meanwhile, as new economic powers rise and old ones plateau, we will witness a reordering of migration flows. From the West as sole destination to a multipolar migration landscape. From static national identities to fluid talent ecosystems. From crisis-driven narratives to value-driven strategies. Ultimately, immigration is becoming less about where you're from and more about what you bring. In the decades ahead, those who understand the immigration ladder will be better positioned to interpret global policy, predict movement patterns, and navigate the migration marketplace with clarity and foresight.